Crafting for Profit Live. Today's topic is mindset when starting a business. So we're going to talk about how to adopt that business mindset. Now, if you are joining us on the YouTube Live, welcome. You can ask questions when you're live. So ask them in the comment section and we will see them. However, we're going to try to keep this on topic. So we might wait to answer your question till the end, but have no fear, we will get to it. Now, if you are watching this on the replay or the podcast itself, you can also ask us questions. We have a form for that. So drop below in the form to drop below in the comment section or the podcast notes to get the form to ask us questions. That's where you can also ask us any off-topic questions. If you have a really crazy question that has nothing to do with the topic, then drop down there to ask it. All right. So, and also to help us out, if you want to help us out, be sure to rate and review the podcast and share this episode with your friends. Now we want to introduce, we have a guest today because Corey and I don't know a whole lot about mindset, but we have an expert for you. So our expert is Nicole Holleman, and she is with Life Coach Baker, and she also has Fantasy Fangirls, which we will be talking about. So I'm going to let Nicole introduce herself.
Hello. You two know about mindset. You're not giving yourself enough credit. My name is Nicole Holleman. I am the CEO of Life Coach Baker and the co-owner of Fantasy Fangirls. I actually just recently made the pivot from Life Coach Baker into Fantasy Fangirls full time. So that's very exciting. We'll talk about that momentarily. But basically, when it comes to mindset, I'm going to do a really short background on me. So I actually grew up in a family that was very heavily immersed in the personal development world. My dad and my mom both worked for big people. And it was really like from the get-go, I was immersed in this personal development. And I loved it. It was so fascinating. And I also had some questions because there was a lot of like positive influence. Just think happy thoughts. And I'm like, but is that true though? So in my later years, in my, mid to early 20s, I started getting a lot more into the neuroscience behind mindset and why do we do what we do? Why does our mindset tend to shift one way or another? And I really devoted about 5 years of my life to it. So I'm really excited to talk to you both today about it because I like to think I know some stuff.
So you do know some stuff.
Thank you.
You absolutely know some stuff. So I first got to know Nicole. So I was kind of looking for life coach, business coach, and I was kind of looking around. And I found her on Instagram. And if just go to Instagram now, I'm pretty sure I dropped it in the YouTube description and we'll drop it in the podcast notes. Just go to her Instagram, watch some of her older reels. She was like speaking to me when she's talking about like the mindset thing from other coaches was like, what are they talking about? Like I could understand her. I could understand the science behind it. And I was like, I've got to get to know this person. And I have to tell this story. She was offering up like little free sessions and like I grabbed one immediately. Right. And I had done free sessions with other coaches and they just basically pitched you on their coaching. She made me work during that first session, like work. And I was like, okay, sold. What are you selling? I'll buy it, whatever it is.
I didn't know that story. Oh, that makes me so happy.
Yeah, it was totally like the best free money I've ever spent.
Yeah, I am not a coach for the faint of heart. I know I do make people really work hard. Oh, that makes me so happy. Thank you. Oh, someone's in Colorado Springs. I am as well. Yeah. Or not Colorado Springs, but I'm in northern Colorado.
Okay. All right. And then I introduced Nicole, I think, to Corey, didn't I?
Yeah, you started telling me about her and I was like, okay, this seems like something I need to check out more. I think I don't know if I talked about this last episode, but I had like a really hard year 2 years ago, like just mentally, just in my job in general. I was just not in the greatest place because I just felt really down all the time. Even though I was being successful, I didn't feel successful enough. I didn't feel like I was working hard enough. I didn't feel like I was producing enough. And all of that kind of led me to Nicole, who was like, okay, we need to like figure this out because it was very difficult for me to kind of wrap my brain around the mindset piece of it because I'm very type A. I value my productivity. I feel like my value comes from how much I can do. I'm a perfectionist. Like all of these things that Nicole tends to speak to were just exactly the things that I sort of struggle with. And so we started working together and I feel like I still stress out some, but I feel like in general, my attitude is just so much better. I don't go to that dark place, how my business is going to fall apart and we're going to be poor and living on the street, right? Like that's where my brain would just death spiral, right? But now I'm much easier to pivot. I'm way more productive, but I work less, which is phenomenal. I mean, isn't that what we all want? I get more done with working less. So Nicole has been a game changer in my business.
If you don't, I would love to touch on that real quick, because so many people, when they think about mindset or they think about like personal growth, they think about my life is going to be awesome and nothing's going to get me down, rah. And that's not true. We are human beings. We live a life that has ups, it has downs, it has middle grounds. And the point of having these tools in your back pocket is not so that you can be like, I am happy when your life is like a this is fine fire meme going on behind you. And instead it's looking at, okay, like this is my situation. However, I am capable, I am smart, I am intelligent, I am worthy enough to get myself out of this. It's more of talking to the what's the word I'm looking for? It's almost like talking to who you can be, who you are even right now, in order to get yourselves into a better place. It's not about like being blind and putting up blinders. It's instead saying, this is my situation. However, I have the control over my life to know how to handle it. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And I think you both have mastered that so beautifully. I'm such a proud coach. It makes me so happy.
Some days, and some days you're like, no.
Sometimes I'm like that to me. I'm like, what was that?
Yeah, some days you get a panicked message from me and it's like, okay, Corey, like calm down.
I will take any panicked message from either of you any day.
So we can kick this off with like, what is mindset and what does mindset mean? So we'll let Nicole answer that.
I'll start off with what it is not. A lot of people hear the word mindset and they're like, ooh, some ethereal woo-woo that we can't really grasp onto. Or they think it's positive. They like go out into a garden, they see it full of weeds and they're like, there's no weeds in this garden. And instead, you have to be realistic. So in my opinion, mindset is looking at more of the neuroscience behind it. Basically saying, what is my mind focusing on at any given moment? And how does that tend to I'm going to say this in the most laden terms as possible, but how does that lean into my energy? How does that change my day-to-day productivity? How does that change how I show up as a human being? So for me, mindset is what am I focusing on? What am I believing in? Our beliefs are a huge part of our mindset because we tend to believe things, and that is like concrete. For instance, identities are a huge part of our belief system. And if I have an identity it's actually a true story. Many, many years ago, I had an identity. I am stupid. I can't read. I can't do anything. I'm terrible at school. I can't write. I was in remedial spelling. I couldn't figure it out. And I had that belief for so long. And it wasn't really until, honestly, if I'm being super honest, it wasn't until just recently when I started to really lean into, maybe I am an intelligent person. And it changed from maybe I am to I am an intelligent person. But if we're really leaning into what is mindset, I'm going to just kind of kick us off with a big one. It's called the reticular activating system. This is, in my opinion, the foundation to what mindset is that we can grasp onto. So it's not that ethereal woo-woo, right? The reticular activating system is this big old filter in the front part of our brain. And it's almost like we're going throughout our day. And here's a perfect example. Have either of you shopped for a car recently?
Angie? I haven't, but I love this example.
Same.
Okay, I'll do my example then. So, my husband and I, we were shopping for a car like last year, and we really wanted, for reasons I don't know, but we really wanted one of those bright orange Subaru Crosstreks. And prior to us making the decision for this bright orange Subaru Crosstrek, which by the way, we would have named the Mimosa Mobile because I'm 4, but prior to us deciding that we were going to choose this as our car, we live in Colorado. Crosstreks are everywhere, especially those bright orange Subaru Crosstreks, but we didn't notice them. And the second we made the decision, hey, this is a car that is important to us, it has meaning to us, our filter in our brain said, oh, hey, remember all those cars that you didn't see? Yeah, you probably didn't remember, but I'm going to start pointing them out to you now going further. So I was driving from Denver to like a town in northern Colorado one day, which is like 45 minutes. I swear to you, I saw 12 orange Subaru Crosstreks. They were always there. But because I was not focusing or saying that these are important, my RAS, my reticular activating system, decided to not deem them important enough to go into my mindset. So this is not just about cars. I'm not a car person by any means, trust me. This is instead about saying what is important to me because my brain is going to seek it out. So like I was saying, if I say I am stupid, my brain is going to deem that important to me. That belief is important to me. And therefore, I'm going to look at the world through a lens of I am stupid. So for business owners here, a lot of the time, when we're first starting, it's I'm not worthy enough to start a business. I don't have enough time. I don't have the luck to start. I hear a lot of people say, I'm not lucky enough to start a business because I don't know when we deemed that you have to be a business owner and be lucky at the same time. I've never heard that before. I'm not smart with money. I mean, I could go on and on and on. But if we're saying that over and over and over again, our RAS is going to deem that our reality. And it will be a lot harder to start a business versus if you say, I'm capable of figuring anything out, even if I don't know it. Boom. That is an RAS tactic that immediately puts you in the driver's seat to be able to figure anything out. And you will see opportunities come up because you're now opening your mind up in a new way. That was a really long answer to your question.
That was a great answer to our question.
Yeah, so I love that example so much. Sometimes I'm like, am I thinking about orange cars? Even if it doesn't have to do anything about orange cars, but I'm like, am I training my brain to think about orange cars right now?
Yeah, I love that. Yes, exactly. It's so true.
All right, so let's talk about a little bit more about that, maybe that RAS or other tips you have to sort of adopt that mind. Oops, sorry.
Okay.
I'm getting way ahead of myself. We're just going to edit this out of the podcast. I want to talk more about limiting mindsets first. I want to talk more because you talked about like the I am stupid and some of the other questions that we might have, but why are those so bad to think when like there's part of me that thinks like, but it's true. Like I'm not good with money. So, why is that still a limiting belief, even if it's kind of necessarily like a true belief? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And one of the things I love this quote so much is your past does not equal your present unless you live there. So a lot of us have these beliefs of, for instance, I'm not good with money. Maybe you haven't been good with money in the past, but does that mean you cannot gain the skill to get good with money in the future? And it's shifting your mindset from I'm not good with money, because that's very black and white thinking, right? It's I'm either good with money or I'm bad with money. And I've chosen to be bad with money. And here's all these reasons to show that I'm correct here. Or you can say, okay, that's something that maybe I did not put the time or the energy, or I was afraid to do the research and figure it out. But does that mean I'm not capable of doing that in the future? Absolutely not. So when it comes to limiting beliefs, we tend to have these in our blueprint of our brain, I'll call it, from very, very young. These can start when we are wee little things. And the big reason is because when we're in the ages, I think it's, they might have updated the study, so I might be misquoting here, but I believe when I read this, it was like 2 or 3 years ago, 5 to 14. The ages 5 to 14, we are at our most susceptible. Words are hard, my goodness. We are at our most susceptible up here. So if we have a family member, for instance, who is really bad at money, and hey, our family members, specifically our parents or our caretakers, we tend to idolize everything that they are. We tend to want to be who they are. And obviously, this is not every situation, but this is definitely the majority. So, I realize my mom's really bad with money. Maybe I'm really bad with money too. Boom, belief has inserted in my brain. And then as you grow up, you tend to have that belief and so on and so forth. And because your RAS is like, you're bad with money, you'll look at your bank account and you're like, oh, I have $100 in there. I'm bad with money. Meh. And it's just that further cementing rather than saying, oh, I have $100 in my bank account. Let me do a little bit of research and see why that is. What can I do differently next time? That is my favorite question. You mentioned tools, and I'll go ahead and just throw one here right now. One of my favorite questions to challenge limiting beliefs, not so much change them because they don't change at the drop of a hat, but more to challenge them, is to say, is that really true? Or, am I capable of changing my opinion here? Or, what data do I have to actually back up the antithesis, the opposite? Is it true that you're always bad with money? Or did you one time make an investment that actually really paid off, but because you're only focusing on I'm bad with money, your RAS totally deleted it out of your brain? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Dope.
Yeah, I think so. And I feel like when we're talking about like crafting for profit here, a lot of people are transitioning from hobby to business. So how do they go from that hobby mindset, a hobby crafter, I'm making it for family, I'm making it for friends, to like a business mindset of I'm going to sell things, I'm going to make money? Like, how do you transition between those two?
So, one of the biggest things that I see get in people's way here is when they go from doing things for free to doing things for money and suddenly being like, I'm not worthy of $23 for this sweatshirt. Oh my God, who do I think I am to charge for to charge for these things that I was doing for free for so long? Who's going to pay me? There's so many other sweatshirt designers out there. Who am I to add another, marble to the bucket? Like, there's so much belittling ourselves and thinking that we are not worthy of making money doing what we love. So one of the things I love to do here is actually spook the heck out of our brains. And that is by listening and absorbing as many stories as possible of people doing the dang thing, of people going out, having really successful businesses launch and stuff like that. And there's a double-edged sword here because you can go out and suddenly you're thinking about, if we're looking at the RAS side of the situation, if I go out and I listen to 10 stories of successful business owners, and I do like to listen to stories of not overnight success people. And I'm going to put major air quotes because I think overnight success does not exist, but not the seemingly overnight success, I'll say. But I want to hear the stories of the people who fell flat on their face over and over and over again and then finally figured it out. Those are the stories I want to hear because that's training my RAS to see, hey, you can be successful. Hey, look at all these other people doing it. Now, I mentioned a double-edged sword. That's the reason why I never do like the overnight success stories full stop. Sometimes sprinkle them in there because they're fun and empowering, but never make those the only ones because let's say this is especially with perfectionism, people tend to be very like, I want it now, and they'll like white knuckle it, right? And let's say you go through a week and nothing happens. And you're like, well, I suck. I'm clearly never going to make it. And da, 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 da. And it's just, we go down this whole spiral. So I don't like to do that. But I really like to start this mindset process of being a business owner from actually external sources. Yes, you can sit down and journal on your own and say, I am capable. I am good. I am an awesome business owner. People will pay me lots and lots of money. We can totally do that. But sometimes that's too big of a jump for our mindset to grasp onto. So this is almost what I imagine like the bridge of it being. It's like opening up that new neural pathway in our brain saying, hey, see, they can do it. You can do it too. It's just opening that bridge up.
I wouldn't know anything about that perfectionist stuff you were talking about.
Oh yeah, you both are totally immune. I am as well.
I've never been a perfectionist about anything.
Oh yeah, me neither.
No clue what you're talking about.
I don't always want things yesterday. I love it.
All right. So if that's one of the ways that we take our mindset from sort of that hobby, part of our business to like the business part of our business, then how do we sort of adapt our mindset and grow our mindset as our businesses grow? How do we not stay in that original spot? Because I think that's something that I actually struggled with a lot, where it was like, I'm never going to be bigger than this. I'm never, This was several years ago, but I was just like, I guess that this is how many page views I'm going to have. This is how much sales I'm going to make. And that's it, because it was consistent for a while. And I was like, well, I guess that's it. And it took me a long time to be like, maybe that's not it.
Well, I think it boils down to doing the antithesis of that. It's saying, I like this example here. If I'm at a bar and I'm playing darts, what is the goal of me playing darts? I'm not a big darts person, but I do know this about darts.
Get a bullseye.
Get a bullseye. Yes, exactly. And if I'm playing darts and I'm trying for a bullseye, and then suddenly the dartboard goes away, what's my goal of darts? Shoot at wall. Like it's just like anywhere. It could be anything. So what this is looking at, okay, what is my bullseye? Because I need a direction I want to be heading towards. We do need goals, especially as business owners. We're always wanting to be growing, and even as people, that's just embedded in our human makeup. But if we don't have a direction of where we're going, our mindset is going to immediately fall back into old patterns because, hey, that's what's comfortable and it knows how to like sink its claws into that, right? So if I say, okay, my new goal is, maybe I'm a new store, maybe I'm a new Etsy store. I want to have 5 sales in a week. Maybe that's my goal. I'm really excited. I really want that. So that's my dartboard bullseye. I want 5 sales in a week. What I would do then is I would then close my eyes and I would go through a day in the life or even a week in the life of that version of myself. What does that person wake up experiencing? What does that person wake up thinking? What are they grateful for? How do they spend their days? What do they see? What do they see when they look in the mirror? How do they talk to themselves when they look in the mirror? And oh my goodness, their dream is coming true, or at least their next goal is coming true. All of those things, that is the mindset we need to adopt now here, back a few steps, right? We might not be making 5 sales a week on Etsy, but if we start adopting that kind of mindset, guess what? Our RIS is going to listen and it's going to start looking for opportunities that will bring you closer to that outcome. So for example, it's a very real example, not even a few months ago, I can't even say that anymore. It was like 8 months ago. I was at a podcasting conference and I was like, I really want to be a full-time podcaster. That is just something I've always wanted to do. I'm realizing it more and more. And when I put that bullseye in front of me, I started to think about, okay, what kind of mindset would that person have? Like, okay, I'm intelligent. That was a big one. I'm clear. I am concise. I am charismatic. I would start to talk to myself in that way. And less than a week later, after leaving that conference, my sister and I decided to start a podcast, and it's now my full-time job. So that's like the super short version. Trust me, it's not an overnight success story, but I do think that that is the biggest tool that we can use in our back pocket, is saying, what's my goal? What's the mindset of that person who's achieving that goal? How can I adopt that mindset now?
This has been really helpful for me too. I think just with some of the different things I've gone through in this last year is kind of picturing who that person is that I want to be, which it sounds kind of woo-woo. It really it really does imagine the person you want to be, power of positive thinking. But it does really help me to get out of that kind of darker place that I can go to where it's not going to last. Like this time is not going to last forever. I have always made it work in the past. All of these different things that I'm constantly telling myself, it will look like this in the future, like all of these things. And it really does just change the way that your mind is angled. If it's not constantly angled on, oh, that competitor is doing more than I am, or I'm not making enough money, or, all of these things that I personally struggle with, that I bet a lot of people struggle with here too.
Well, and there's a great quote that says, where focus goes, energy flows. And if I focus on my circumstances right now that I really don't like, I'm going to show up not in the best place. I'm going to show up really low energy. I'm going to be throwing my hands up in the air saying, woe is me throughout the day. Or I could focus on, that's my goal. That's the person I want to become. Now, does that mean I'm saying my life right now, I'm not looking at it? No, it's instead saying, that's what I want to be working towards. How can I take my current circumstances and make them that instead? And that takes a lot of time. And I think that this is the big thing, especially as perfectionists. And a lot of crafters I've met through you both are a lot of perfectionists. So there's listen up, Linda's. I really do want to admit that a lot of us tend to want things now. We want things yesterday. We want things like that black and white thinking. And then we sometimes get to that level of success and we're like, oh, but it's not actually the 5 sales a week. It's actually the 15 sales a week. That's what's going to make me happy. So you all would both know this. I am a big proponent of, whenever you make even a step towards your goal, whether it was a big step, a little step, even just a little hop, celebrate. And that is literally saying, and celebration is not always like, okay, go out to drinks with your friends or go out to dinner with your partner. No, it's literally as simple as pausing, because we're so busy. We tend to never pause. It's literally as simple as pausing and saying, I'm really proud of myself and the progress I'm making. When was the last time we did that? Never. We never do that naturally.
Yeah, so I'm horrible at that. And just we talk about it all the time, because I tend to do what you said. I hit a goal and I'm like, what's the next goal? That is my celebration. And that is the wrong thing to do.
And I'm like, no.
Yeah, stop it. So I tend to you and I talked about this, and it's been helping me, is at the end of the day, every day, thinking about what I have gotten done and what I've accomplished, and like the goals I had for the day, and what, like, just today, celebrating my wins, because I never stop to celebrate wins. I'm always moving on to the next thing every single time.
Yeah.
And I think wins too. I mean, you were saying like it can be the smallest thing. Like there's days that have just gone completely off the rails, totally horribly. And at the end of the day, I'll say, hey, I made it through today. Like that is the smallest win that I have. You know, it's just, even if it's just, you know, is anybody getting feedback, or is that
I am getting feedback. That was very weird.
I did not hear it. Sorry.
You're good.
Sorry for this giant pause. All of a sudden, Nicole and I were like assaulted. What is it? It's so loud.
Oh dear.
It sounds like, I don't know, the thing that crunched up like all the people in Star Wars, the giant trash compactor.
I adore you for making that reference. Thank you.
Cut all this out of the podcast as well. I don't know.
I think, Angie, did your furnace go on? No? Did someone's mic get turned up? I have no idea what's going on.
I have no idea. Sorry, everyone. Can you guys hear it? Can everybody hear it?
We can hear it,
Oh,
yeah.
other people can hear it too.
Oh dear. Here.
Oh, that stopped it.
It stopped it.
We're good. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah,
like, and bye.
The joys of being live.
Yay!
All right. So, well, Angie will come back, but I was going to say celebrating those really small wins, I feel like is one of those things that it feels like such a small thing. But for me, I needed those small things because like I can't celebrate a big win. Do you know what I mean? Like, yes, I want to move to the next goal. I'm a lot like Angie in that way where I'm just like, get me to that next goal. But there is like this place where I'm like, I just need to celebrate that today I made a video because a year ago I couldn't have made a video. Right. And so those sorts of things are really important to me.
There's this awesome graphic, and it's like a bunch of little teeny tiny stair steppers, and someone's at the very, very bottom of the stairs, and then someone's trying to get to the top of their stairs. And let's say the top of their stairs is their goal, and they're here at the bottom of the stairs, and they make one step. And I love this graphic because it's a side by side, and it's the super zoom out, and it's how we view ourselves, which is like super far away from our goal, versus the super zoomed in, which is the second graphic, and it's someone making a step. And we forget how important those steps are because that's how we get from point A to point B. And yet we think that it's all the big steps. And don't get me wrong, there is a way to activate the big steps more. And I think especially as you're a new business owner, it is really important to do the things that will take you bigger steps versus the little teeny tiny steps that tend to be safer. But we do discredit any steps that aren't like a full leap to the goal. So one of the things that I actually encourage a lot of people to do is, Angie, you even said this earlier, it's to, at the end of the day, whether that's at the end of the workday or even at the end of the evening, because especially a lot of new business owners, you are doing the side hustle thing. You are working nights, you're working weekends. It's a lot. So let's be honest, it's a lot and it's not for the faint of heart. But if you end your day and immediately you're like, okay, what did I not do today? And then beat yourself up for all the things that you didn't do today. That's not gonna help you get that mindset specifically that incorporates, look how far I'm going. Look how, look at what I'm doing. Look at how awesome I'm like, it's not the one that really boosts you up. It's the one that says you're not working hard enough. My therapist literally calls it, you're riding yourself like Seabiscuit. You're basically saying, work harder, 10 times more, go. And we tend to do that a lot, especially as new business owners, because there's so many options to do. But instead, it's looking at the end of the night and saying, or the end of the workday, and writing out a list of at least minimum 3 things you did do that day. And after you get this under your belt for a while, you can transition it into just like making a list in your mind. But when you first start, I really encourage you to do it on paper because there's something so powerful in the mind about seeing it written out versus just thinking about it, because thoughts are fleeting. When you see it written out, that is on paper, and your brain has to activate so many different more things in order to view that thing on paper. So writing out a list of 3 to 5 things that you did do that day, oh my goodness, it is such a game changer, and it takes 5 minutes. It takes 5 minutes. I so recommend it.
I just had like this revelation after you talking about this, that I don't get to the end of my day and think about what I didn't do anymore. Like I just had this revelation where I'm just like, I have not thought about the things I didn't get done in months. I just get to the end of the day and I'm like, here's what I got done. Thankful for what I got done. And I move on, which is just crazy to me because I used to get to the end of the day. I'm like, oh, I had this list and I didn't get A, B, C, and D done, but I haven't had that mindset in months and months. So it works.
Oh my God. The Corey extravaganza lists work. I'm so happy. Oh, that makes me cry. That makes me so happy.
But for me, I also have to be okay with, at the end of the day, if I am like, my one thing I got done today was I listened to my body and I took a break. And that can also be something for me that is like, yes, I did that, because I tend to like work through it. I tend to be that person that works through the pain, works through the cold, works through the flu. No, what I did today was I listened to my body. I took a break and I'm going to be more productive tomorrow. So I have to also let myself be okay with that.
Yes, that's so much for me too. It's Angie and I both
She's
have.
like, yay! I'm like, yay! I'm so proud.
We both have health issues that we work through, and I think we're going to do a whole podcast episode at some point on working with chronic pain, since we both deal with it. But yes, just giving my body the space to be like, I am, I'm okay. Like I didn't get everything done, but I also didn't like run myself into the ground.
My husband and I say this to each other a lot because we tend to lean very into that. I'll call it the workaholic mindset. It does tend to be our go-to. And I'm not perfect, even though I teach on this stuff for 5 years. And him and I have this saying that we say back and forth to each other, and that is human first, always. And we have 2 very demanding jobs. And part of human first is, okay, we are eating dinner, we pause and we have dinner together. We do not eat dinner at our desk. We pause and we eat dinner together. We watch a show together that we love or whatever. And that human first mindset, especially when you're starting a business, like if you start it from, let me floor it on the gas as hard as possible, we tend to think that that's the standard. And then, you're 6 months in and you're like, oh my God, I'm so tired. I can't do this anymore. And we either continue pushing ourselves so hard and we burn out, or we throw our hands up in the air and say, I guess this isn't for me. The art of, when you're first starting a business, balancing that human first, then business owner, it can be really hard because you do want this to happen. You do want this to work. You do tend to work more hours. Like, again, let's be real. But at the end of the day, you always need to remind yourself what is important here. And it is you, your health, your joy, yourself. And then the business can come later.
That's so important. I love the human first. I am going to tattoo that on my forehead.
Honestly,
I really need to hear it.
Needs to just be like a frame on our fridge at this point. We say it so much.
The kind of things that you're talking about that, like you said, it's just 2 words, human first. Those are the ones that stick in my mind. So I always have to boil down whatever kind of thing that I want to put in my mind to like 2 or 3 words so I can repeat them.
Yes. Well, okay. I'm glad I want to touch on this real quick, because one of the most common questions I would get when I talk on this is, okay, like I get the RIS, I get the limiting belief, I get how to change it, I get the darts and the bullseye or whatever, but like, how do I program it? Like how do I program my brain? And one of my favorite ways of viewing this is a very common saying is out of sight, out of mind, right? And if I say, okay, human first, but then I don't ever use it because it's either not in my face or it's not framed on my fridge or it's not something I say back and forth with my husband. If it's basically on the back burner, my brain's just going to forget about it because it's not important. If I have it in my face at all times, like for instance, I think I worded it a little differently, but especially when everything with Fantasy Fangirls was exploding the way it did, I had a bunch of sticky notes on my computer screen on my monitor here. And one of them said, oh God, I can't remember. It was something along the lines of like, pause and be proud. Because I was constantly like, okay, what's next? What's next? Because I felt like I had no control over my life and it was crazy. And that little reminder, pause and be proud, was, okay, your dream is coming true. Remember to live this also. So going back to the, how do we train our brain is, if out of sight, out of mind, what's the antithesis? It's insight, in mind. So I love having, alarms that go off on my phone. I love having sticky notes on my computer. I love having sayings that my husband actively and I say back and forth to each other. I actually had a client the other day write in lipstick on her mirror a saying that she was trying to ingrain in her brain, and it was beautiful. Her handwriting was amazing. It was awesome. But having it in front of your face is one of the fastest ways to reprogram your brain, because if you don't, we tend to forget about it because life gets busy. Even if we think that we're so smart and, oh, not me, Nicole, I'll totally remember it. We can't outsmart our brains. Our brains are really powerful and it tends to not always be in our favor in that way.
And, we're crafters. So make a shirt, make a sign, make a little thing for your desk. There's all kinds of ways to do this.
Exactly.
That's awesome. I'm going to go cut human first. I'm going to go
Human
cut it
first.
on my laser after this. And I'm just going to hang it up because I feel like that is just such a good word for me right now when we're going through a lot of personal stuff that I'm not going to talk about here. But like right now, I feel like I am like forgetting to eat, things like that, where I'm like, okay, Corey, you are human first. Just take care of that human first.
I think for especially a lot of new business owners, having something along the lines of, I actually had this for someone one time. It was money, please. It was like, because it was them training their brain to be okay asking for payment in exchange for something that they loved. So money, please was something that they had for a long time. And I thought that was so funny, but something along the lines of, I deserve getting paid, or I can make money doing what I love. I had that one for me for a long time. The big thing here is, if it sounds, quite frankly, if it sounds stupid, it will not work for you. Like, it needs to be compelling to you. So if something that's like, I am deserving of all the good rejoices in the world, if that's not something that's going to work for you, don't use it. If money, please is much better and more up your, I'm like, I like my affirmations to almost be a little mean to myself. Like that's just the way my mind works. But some people do like a little bit more like ethereal, lyrical type of affirmations. Lean into the type of language that gets your body going, like, ooh, yes, that's it right there, because that's how we are going to reprogram our mind with our own language.
Yeah, I love that.
So Corey was talking a little bit about challenging times, and we all face those, right? Your business isn't doing well, or personal life isn't doing well, whichever. So how do you stay motivated, focused on those business goals, even when the rest of life is falling apart? So
that's a great question. And honestly, my biggest thing is make your goals a lot smaller than you want to. When we are in rough times, we tend to be like, I need the polar opposite. And sometimes that can be really overwhelming for us to go after. So instead, I would say, okay, if that's my polar opposite, what's like the first step to get there? And can I just focus on that right now? When we're going through tough times, specifically personal tough times, we're not in the business. Our mind is elsewhere. We are distracted. And if we say, okay, I'm going to do these 25,000 things this week, our brain is just going to be like, yeah, no, like it's going to shut down. And we're going to beat ourselves up for not being productive enough. We're going to beat ourselves up for X, Y, or Z reasons. So instead, it's saying, okay, if that's, my end goal, what's the first step it takes to get there? And I'm going to block everything else out and just focus on that first step. When things are hard, make it, this is actually, I think I've used this analogy with both of y'all for a while. When we're in hard times, I want you to think about, you have a shovel in your hand and you're digging a hole, you're digging a hole, you're digging a hole. You both just started nodding. I think that this is familiar. When we're in hard times, we're digging this hole, we're 10 feet underground before we realize, oh dear, I am in a hole. Oh, this really sucks. But you know what? I need to be making money. I need to be doing well. I need to be happy. I need to be whatever. So I need to jump into the sky. And if I'm 10 feet underground and I try to get soaring up into the sky, I'm going to fall flat on my face. I'm going to like, and just like face plant into the mud. So instead, I think about the trying to get to that, super far off goal, that polar opposite of your situation, that's jumping into the sky. It's too much of a distance. So instead, what's my next step is picking up that shovel and building yourself some stairs. It's what's my first step I'm going to carve out. And that's me getting out of this hole. What's my next step? Okay, carving that out, getting out of this hole. We don't build the entire staircase out of a 10-foot hole all at once. We build it one step at a time. And that's how I want everyone to look at getting out of hard times. I actually want everyone who's starting a business to look at that very similarly. If you really hate your day job, or if you are in retirement and you're realizing you need money, or if any reasons whatsoever, really and truly, I want you to think about what's my next step, not my far, far, far away step, because that can be really overwhelming. And then we're in a hole again.
Yeah, that's such good advice. Do you have any advice? I feel like too, of the letting go of the things that don't matter, because that's one of those things that's really hard for me as a perfectionist. Like I want to be on all the social medias. I want to making all the videos and writing all the blog posts and making all the money and doing all the things. And, right now my personal life is not the best it's ever been. And I do feel like I'm struggling with like, how do I just say, okay, we're just going to forget that for now.
Yeah. We as perfectionists have a laundry list of reasons why we should do it all. We should do it the most, right? And it's a really compelling list. Let's be real. So sometimes if it's really loud, sometimes I have people actually write out a laundry list of all the opposites, challenging that thought. Okay, if I want to, this is actually a really good one for a lot of new and I'd say growing business owners as well. I need to be on all the platforms. I need to be, doing the blogs. I need to be doing the YouTubes. I need to have the most YouTubes and all of this stuff. And I love writing out a reason of why maybe is this not the best idea right now? And it's challenging these thoughts. It's instead saying like, I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to release it. Da, 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 da. Because sometimes our brain has really got its talons sunk into it and it's really hard to release. So I look at this as like we're almost plucking the talons out one by one. We're making a list of, hey, why maybe is my perfectionist brain not right now? And then when we get to that point where we're like, okay, I see a much more objective board. What do I want to do? And we get to make a decision from a much more clear head, from a much more I'm in the driver's seat, rather than a, oh my God, I need to do everything all at once. And like us perfectionists, we tend to like drive ourselves like Seabiscuit. It's absolutely crazy what we do for ourselves. So that would honestly, if I gave one tool for people who are experiencing that, I would literally whip out a sheet of paper or whip out the notes app on your phone and just start writing down what are some reasons why this is maybe not the best idea, and see where your mind goes.
Probably going to have to do that this afternoon.
I got you. I would like to hear about that list, please.
I will send you my list later.
Thank you.
She's like, yes, I will do that.
Not to give you homework when you have me on a live.
See, I told you she makes you work. I told everyone.
I am not for the faint of heart. Let's just put it that way.
Oh my goodness. All right, so let's dive in a little bit into overwhelm, which we've talked a little bit about. But what are some other ways we can like effectively manage our time and resources to kind of run a successful like craft business?
I am a major believer in the 80-20 rule. So for those of you who are not as familiar, 80-20 rule basically means in order for me to achieve a goal, let's say, there are 100 tasks that I need to do to achieve said goal. But 80 of those tasks tend to be not very helpful. They tend to be things that maybe move me like a little teeny tiny step forward, or maybe not at all, or maybe they're just there to appear like I'm busy, but I don't really, Angie's like guilty. Yes, it's very, very common. We want to be busy, especially as business owners. We've glorified the society of busyness, right? So a lot of these 80 tasks tend to be the illusion of busyness. But then there's those other 20 that tend to be things that are really scary. They tend to be really out of our comfort zone, but they also tend to leap and bound us closer to our end result that we're trying to get to. So this is the 80-20 rule. It's looking at your goal, and it's saying, what are the 20% tasks? What are the big, big, scary tasks that are going to take me way closer to my goal? And what are the things that are maybe on my list because I should do them, or because they sound easy, or because I know, or because I feel like this one person on a live told me I needed to do it. And then I, got into my head that I won't be successful unless I'm on all of the platforms. There tends to be a lot of shame and should in the 80, and there tends to be a lot of fear, and specifically fear of failure and rejection in the 20. But the 20% tasks, those are the ones that get you to your goal. And they are also the ones that keep you sane. And they're also the ones that tend to take overwhelm and way, way, way lessen it, because you don't have 80 tasks you're doing, you have 20 instead. So what I would tell people to do in this instance is I would say, okay, what's your goal? And then I would say, okay, write out a list of things that you feel like you need to do in order to achieve said goal. And then I would go through each of those lists, or excuse me, each of those items. And I would say, is that a 20 or is that an 80? And all of the 80s, ball up, throw in the trash, and do the 20s.
So for me as well, the 80s feel good.
Oh, yeah.
They feel accomplished. I got so much done today. Yes, what you're saying is true. They didn't move me probably any closer to my goal, but I got that sense of accomplishment from them. So I would always fill my day with the 80.
Yes.
Like, every single time. It was like the feel good of them. The I got so much done. I was so busy of it.
Yes, that's exactly like let's say someone who's starting like let's say like an Etsy shop or something, and maybe one of their tasks on said list is to start a TikTok account. I don't know if that would be a 20% task when you're first starting an Etsy store. Instead, it's probably get 5 to maybe even 10 real. You guys are the Etsy experts, so I might be spouting really wrong information. So please correct me if I am. But like, it's getting some really good, solid things in your store. And then when you're at the marketing part, then maybe TikTok is actually going to be a 20% task. But at the very beginning, you need to know, okay, again, it goes back to that dartboard. What is my dartboard? What is my dartboard? And if that dartboard is gone, everything feels like a 20% task. Everything feels urgent. And that's when overwhelm really tends to hit in, which, by the way, overwhelm is literally our brain going into overdrive and hitting the fight, flight, freeze button on, like, it's like an epic, like 80s cartoon smash, like it gets really aggressive. And so instead, I want you to think about it instead of fight, flight, freeze, which, by the way, we tend to fight a lot, especially as perfectionists. And fight means, let me get them all done. Watch me do all the things today. And then the next thing you know, you're exhausted. But instead of doing that, it's looking at, okay, what's my dartboard? What's my bullseye? And then it's saying, okay, what's a 20% task that's going to get me there? That is, I wish I had done that when I was first starting my Life Coach Baker business. It would have taken me probably it took me about 2 years to go full time. I would have probably gone full time in about half that minimum.
Yeah, if only we knew then what we know now.
Like, if only hindsight's 2020, right?
All right, so we are about at the end of the questions Corey and I had. While we are going to let Nicole talk a little bit about an offer she has, but before that, if you have questions for us or Nicole about this whole mindset thing, and you're on YouTube Live, drop them in the comments now. We'll start pulling some of those up. But for now, Nicole, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about your offer if you would like. And I'm going to put up a QR code here where they could scan and get that.
Perfect. So as working with perfectionists, I've been doing this for about 5 years. One of the biggest words I hear is overwhelm. I'm so overwhelmed. There's so many things I need to do. I have so many things I need to do in order to start my business. And whenever we're overwhelmed, like I said, that fight, flight, freeze button tends to get activated. We either fight and try to do all the things, and then we feel exhausted, and then we're still beating ourselves up for all the things we didn't do. Or we freeze, we procrastinate, we bury our head in the sand. We tend to say, oh, you know what? My windows really need washing. I'll go wash my windows instead because that's so much easier than tackling my to-do list. So I created a mini course called Over the Overwhelm, and it is a golden 15-minute exercise that is just brain dumping all the things that are swirling around in your head and looking at that list and saying, what do I actually need to do? Because maybe wash my windows isn't the most important thing right now. But when we live in our head like this, it tends to be really, really, really scary. It tends to be really overwhelming, and it tends to be loud, so loud. So like I said at the very beginning of this live, having that external voice is so helpful for getting you back in that zone and getting back in the driver's seat. So I created this 15-minute exercise. I walk you through every single thing step by step. But also, when we're in overwhelm, we have a lot of let's say troubleshooting that needs to happen. We have a lot of causers of overwhelm. Things like, oh my gosh, there's so many. But basically what I'm saying is I have an entire separate section of this mini course. It's all included. That is just a bunch of troubleshooting overwhelm. How to prioritize is probably the most watched one on there. How do I prioritize things? And this is normally a $30 mini course, but I love you both so much and you're so amazing. And thank you for having me as your first guest. I'm very, very honored. So it's 70% off, which basically means it's about $7, but you get the entire 15-minute exercise, which I have clients who use this regularly. Like I have clients who use this on repeat. Then you get all of the troubleshooting overwhelm little videos as well. And multitasking, that was another one. I was like, there's one that starts with an M. Multitasking is one of the videos on there. And you also get a little introduction as to why overwhelm happens in our brain. I'm a big believer of explaining the neuroscience of why our brain does what it does, because it's so mysterious up there. So there's a little bit of an explainer video of the neuroscience behind overwhelm and why we get activated. So that is Over the Overwhelm. And I think you mentioned there's a little QR code. I don't know why. I think it's this way. That way.
So if you're watching on YouTube, we are randomly pointing because we can't find the point. But yes, I put a QR code. And also if you're watching later, YouTube description has it. Podcast notes has the link. You can click that link, get right to it. And I think Nicole said this goes to September 2024. So you have a very long time to cash in on this offer.
Yes.
All right. Now, so we're going to take final questions. If you were joining us on the YouTube live, anything for Nicole on mindset, overwhelm, techniques, tips to help you deal with your business, now would be a great time to ask those.
Someone asked if this would be good, but I'm assuming over the overwhelm, they mean, would this be good for people with ADHD? Yes, my husband has ADHD. I've coached a lot of people with ADHD. This has worked extremely well for them. I'm not going to say it's like the golden ADHD exercise because that's not my forte, but I have seen this work extremely well with people with that extra busy mind, we'll call it, for sure.
Yeah, I personally use the exercise a lot. I will say that. It really helps me personally to get through. I tend to get very overwhelmed. It's like there's just a lot on my plate, a lot to do. I tend to get very overwhelmed, so I kind of use this a lot. Yeah. So highly, highly recommend.
Yay! Good. That makes me happy. The other thing I do want to say about overwhelm, just whether you get the course or not, just about overwhelm is the goal is to never feel overwhelmed. That was too negative. So the goal is to basically say overwhelm's going to happen, but this is a tool in your back pocket. And this tool is literally just laying everything out and saying, what is my 20%? What is the most important right now? So again, that's one of the things I think people hear the word mindset and it's like, oh, well, it's to never feel sad or to never feel down or unenergized. We're human beings. We're going to have bad night sleeps and we're going to feel just not great a day. That's going to happen. We're going to get overwhelmed. We're going to have those moments where the washing our windows feels like the most important thing in the world right now. These are not to say those are never going to happen. This is instead to say when that happens, here's a tool rather than just the monkeys going crazy in your brain and relying on that.
I feel like the Windows example came from me because I'm pretty sure we made a list together and Windows was on it. So I'm just going to go ahead and own up to that right now. All the business things were on there and the Windows were, okay?
I do think that was from you. I totally forgot.
That makes so much sense. Yeah, I feel like this is such a good point because for me, it's oh, I haven't watered the plants or definitely need to vacuum my carpet that's below this desk because I'm filming a YouTube video and I'm like, nobody's going to see the carpet below this desk. It's just one of those things where your brain is just what's an easy task that I can just take care of?
Yes.
And it's so easy that you don't have to think about it. And when you're overwhelmed, thinking is just so difficult. So I do think this exercise is just really, really good for being okay, there are other tasks that will actually get me closer to my goal that are still easy enough to sort of tackle in this moment.
And this actually goes along with Sue's question. With the 80-20, can you change the percentage or is that optimum? 80-20 is kind of arbitrary. It's more just the small percentage and the big percentage. The big percentage just tends to be a lot of miscellaneous tasks that are not as important on a given day. And I've literally had people say, okay, on Tuesday, let's say they're building their business, and a big part of businesses are social media nowadays. Let's say they're building their business, and on Tuesday they're hitting Overwhelm, and on their to-do list they had post 3 videos onto Instagram stories. And that felt way too overwhelming. We looked at that and we said, is this is this a 20% task for the day? And they said, no, you know what? Probably getting my link tree cleaned up and so it feels really clear and concise is the 20% task. And it's like, great, let's do that for today. But then on Wednesday, posting one of those videos was a 20% task. So these are going to change from day to day. But the overwhelm, and honestly, just the 80-20 exercise to begin with, it's to say, what is right now? What is the most important thing right now that I need to do? So for instance, I'm using this pretty actively right now, is there feels like there's so many things that I need to do in the new business that I'm building with my sister. And her and I and our executive producer regularly meet, and we look at our entire list and we say, what's most important right now? And we highlight things. You'll love this, Corey. We highlight things that are really important in red. We highlight things that are medium important in yellow, and things that are low priority in green. And that way we know, okay, this is a, 20% task, this super important thing. And this is a really low task. We can do that at the end of the month or something like that. I think that might have answered the question. Beautiful. Yes. Good.
Yeah, I do feel like having that, the list that's kind of color coded has been one of the biggest game changers for me personally. I think I talked about it in the last episode, because it's just like being able to see, and for me, it's not like necessarily most important, least important, those sorts of things. It's really how much brain space will they take.
Yes.
Right.
So you and I actually made that small adjustment, and I'm so glad you brought that up. Do you mind talking about it? Because I think that was
Yeah, sure.
that was so helpful, and I think a lot of people might find that helpful as well.
Yeah, so I have fibromyalgia, and so often my brain just doesn't function very well on some days. I just get a lot of brain fog. My focus is really crummy. My focus is really bad today. Just if I'm looking a little dazed, it's because it's just not the greatest today. And I feel like some days I have the brain space to take care of these really big tasks, and some days I just don't. And I have to, human first. Like, I can't force it. And so I make a list of all the things I need to do, and then I'll color code them easy, medium, or hard. Well, easy, medium, or hard, but it's really more brain space, little, medium, or a lot of brain space. And then that way I can always look and I'm like, okay, I'm really struggling today with my focus, with this brain fog. What are some of those easier tasks that don't take a lot of my brain space? Because it's not very often that I have to do something in this moment. There are times when I do, like I had to show up here at 1 p.m. today to do this podcast because that's what we're doing, and that's awesome. But like, there's not too many things that like it has to be done this second, thankfully, because if I worked in a job like that, I don't know if I would function very well right now. But I can say like, okay, this is a task that's going to require a lot of brain. I'm feeling really good. I'm working at my peak hour here in the morning. I'm going to really make some good progress on this task, versus, oh, it's the late afternoon on a Friday. I can check a couple of these other tasks off. They don't require very much brain at all. And I think dividing it up by the amount of brain space might work for a lot of our audience, because I know that we have a lot of people who, maybe have small kids, maybe have chronic illnesses, maybe have all these things that also take up a ton of space in their brains. And so it's like, how much space do you have to, get to certain tasks during today?
Well, and one of the things I love about this is it allows you to end the day and look at, oh, even though it was a really low brain space task day, look at all these things I did. Going back to that exercise that Angie was talking about, like, it allows you to still feel like you made progress up the stairs that day, even if it was a low energy or you just weren't there that day. It's so good. It's so good. I love it. I'm so proud.
So I highlighted a comment. Dee had said, I do not have a business, but I think this could be a good advice to use every day. And I just wanted to highlight that because absolutely everything we're talking about, I also I absolutely 100% use in my personal life as well. Like prioritizing tasks, like even like things around the house. I definitely do that as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree.
All right. So I think that's all the questions. So first of all, we want to thank you so much, Nicole, for coming on and being our first guest. Thank you so much. Be sure to follow Nicole on social. And if you liked this whole talk, she has a podcast. There are tons of episodes out there called Life Coach Baker. Is it still called that or not?
It actually changed its name. It's called Imperfect Success. And there's about 200 and 12 or 20 episodes we're no longer making episodes of that podcast, but there's so many banked in there. So imperfect success on there. Yes.
Yeah, so binge watch all those old ones. Now, if you are into books, if you are into fantasy books, if you are into like things like A Court of Thorn and Roses, I would highly, highly recommend her new podcast, which is Fantasy Fangirls. I personally am into it. I know Corey is as well. That tells you a little bit about us if you listen to it.
A little bit.
A lot of it. You'll learn a lot about me if you listen to that podcast.
A whole lot.
A whole lot about Nicole.
It is definitely an adult podcast, so don't check it out if you don't like that. But if you like books, you like adult books, definitely Fantasy Fangirls.
Definitely.
Yes.
She and her sister are a hoot to listen to, and the podcast is really well produced. And I feel like, and I would also like to thank you for helping us get this podcast off the ground, because you have been a help to us.
I'm
so much
happy.
help.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you so
honored.
much.
Just so honored. I adore you both.
And so our next episode is in 2 weeks, and it is on craft fair tips and tricks. So that will be on YouTube on March 14th and on the podcast platforms on March 18th. If you want to sign up for our newsletter to get reminders, that'll be in the YouTube description or in the podcast show notes. So sign up there to get reminders.
And again, I wanted to ask everybody, since we are just getting this thing off the ground, if you want to share the podcast, share this YouTube Live, if you want to go onto your favorite podcast provider and rate our show, give us a review. We sort of covet those right now because they really are important to kind of showing this to other people in search results and those sorts of things. So please, 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 if you can, rate, review, we would love that.
And then we do have a random Q&A episode coming up. So if you've ever wanted to ask me or Corey about just random things, life things even, there is a link to a form to ask us questions in the YouTube description or the podcast notes. So drop your questions and we are going to answer them and spill all the tea. So we'll see you in 2 weeks for Craft Fair Tips and Tricks.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.